What are the challenges that you see and that you guys are trying to tackle?
Oh man, let's see. The market's insatiable. The customer base wants more, wants it faster, wants it in different flavors, wants it in different ways, packaged differently, sustainably, of course. So that's really hard as well to try to get more from the existing team, sometimes even a smaller team because of
Mm.
economic issues. So the old adage of how do we do more with less is very, very present right now. So that's a big challenge. The other challenges are that this stuff is really hard. Chemical development, material science development is hard. It's multidimensional. It has an unbelievable amount of variables.
A key component of the modern world economy, the chemical industry delivers products and innovations to enhance everyday life. It is also an industry in transformation, where chemical executives and workers are delivering growth and industry-changing advancements while responding to pressures from investors, regulators, and public opinion. Discover how leading companies are approaching these challenges here on The Chemical Show. Join Victoria Meyer, president of Progressio Global and host of The Chemical Show, as she speaks with executives across the industry and learns how they are leading their companies to grow, transform, and push industry boundaries on all frontiers. Here's your host, Victoria Meyer.
Hi, this is Victoria Meyer. Welcome back to The Chemical Show. Today, I am speaking with Ned Weintraub, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at NobleAI. Noble's a pioneer in science-based AI solutions for chemicals and material companies. And Ned has been involved in digital innovation for industry throughout his career at companies including Seven Signal, Vertana, and HP Cloud. We're going to be talking about business challenges with accelerating chemical development and innovation, how AI fits into that, and a whole lot more. Ned, welcome to The Chemical Show.
Thank you for having me, Victoria.
So you've spent your career in technology and growth-oriented firms. What got you started in this space, and what ultimately brought you to NobleAI?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I've always tried to work for mission-driven companies, and Noble is a mission-driven company. We believe that AI can solve the world's problems better than it can destroy the world. And so we believe that this is a fantastic way of really trying to solve health issues, environmental issues, all sorts of different ways that we can, get over what we're trying to fight every day.
Yeah, makes sense. And I like that mission-driven space because I think we sometimes lose track of that in business, and yet it all
Exactly.
starts out with a bigger purpose.
You got it. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. It helps us get up in the morning.
Absolutely. So the chemical industry, it is definitely in a period of accelerated innovation, right? We're seeing this. In fact, you and I recently met up at ACI. One of their themes was innovation. So innovation is everywhere, and yet we're still challenged in commercializing these new ideas, new products, new innovations. So, first of all, what trends do you really see driving innovation in the chemical space when you go out and talk with customers?
I would say one of the biggest ones was sustainability. Sustainability has finally arrived and moved from sustainability washing to really putting budgets behind it. Again, a mission where companies can feel good about what they're doing and really driving sustainability through everything. And frankly, product development and optimization is a big one. That's the biggest one, but I would also say adapting and agility to regulatory issues. That was the other big focus. And we hear this really from every single one of our customers, which is the world is changing fast. How do we adapt? How do we become more agile? How do we become proactive instead of reactive to a lot of these things? Those are the
Yeah.
two biggest ones that we see kind of driving a lot of the innovation.
Yeah. So I think the drivers are strong. And as you say, they are mission based in many ways. And yet there are still some challenges. What are the challenges that you see and that you guys are trying to tackle?
Oh man, let's see. The market's insatiable. The customer base wants more, wants it faster, wants it in different flavors, wants it in different ways, packaged differently, sustainably, of course. So that's really hard as well to try to get more from the existing team, sometimes even a smaller team because of
Mm.
economic issues. So the old adage of how do we do more with less is very, very present right now. So that's a big challenge. The other challenges are that this stuff is really hard. Chemical development, material science development is hard. It's multidimensional. It has an unbelievable amount of variables, everything from price to market pressures to supply chain risk, personnel risk. This stuff is really hard. So how can technology like science-based AI help in these situations? And that's really why we're here.
And it seems to me, I mean, I think part of that, you talk about the people challenges and just the fact that it's really hard. I know what we're seeing is the continual graying of the chemical industry. Although some of us like better living through chemistry, so we wash that gray away and what have you, right?
Exactly.
um, uh,
Absolutely.
but I think what I'm hearing from people across the industry is a real concern that they're losing really experienced staff
Yeah.
across the board. And it seems particularly in the product development and formulation development space because they're retiring, right? So they're
Yeah.
just they're moving on to greener pastures or however we want to say it.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the same knowledge base in the industry. And it seems like AI is one of the ways that we can really harness and leverage some of that existing knowledge, even perhaps when the people that developed it have moved on.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I thought there's two issues. Number one, you're absolutely right. Senior leaders are retiring, right? They've been in this industry for a very long time. But the other one, which is really interesting, is that there's a talent war
Mm.
and people are leaving. It's not the old days of sticking with your company and getting a gold watch at the end of 30 years. The world has changed. So, how can companies de risk the personnel flight, the brain drain,
Yeah,
as they call it?
yeah,
So, is there a way to really mimic or really institutionalize or codify that institutional knowledge, not be at risk when that person walks out the door? That's also a really interesting conversation that we're having with customers.
yeah.
So, you're 100% right there.
Right. So, I mean, you guys are at the front end of moving AI into product development and developing solutions to support the industry. What do you see as the role, and what are the conversations that you're having about
Yeah.
how people want to integrate AI in this space?
Yeah, the best thing that's happened to us is generative AI, right? The chat GPTs and the Geminis and all of these others have really brought it to the forefront. Now, remember, artificial intelligence has been around 30 years longer than the internet has been around. So just
Wow.
just to give people an understanding, this is not, it's 15 minutes of fame. It's been around for a long time. It just now has, because of the internet, has been able to take all of this data, the oceans of data that they can mine. What's great for creating speeches and my kids' homework doesn't work for science
Yeah.
necessarily because there's not a lot of data. There's not an ocean's amount of data because we're trying to create things. And
Mm.
so, if it were that easy, everybody would do it. We have to be able to help our customers drive new innovation, optimize current products with not a lot of data or completely spread out data. For us, this notion of specialized AI or science based AI, especially in chemical and material science, is really critical because we can do a lot with very little data. We can be very prescriptive in what problems we're being asked to solve and really be able to accelerate based on that. That's a big piece of it's great that we have generative AI, but specifically focused in this world that you and I live in, it has to be specialized.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So you say that there's not a lot of data. I think people would assume we are awash with data. And certainly it's true in when I think about chemical companies and just their overall business and business operations, we have a ton of data about customers. We have a ton of
Right.
data about manufacturing. And we probably have a lot of it about product and product development. Although I will say, I reflect back and think about my time in industry when I worked really closely with our formulation guys to help get new products out into market and stuff. And I was sometimes shocked by like how few data points were actually
Phew.
on a curve or on a graph or what have you.
Yeah,
So it's interesting twist on this because I sometimes think we feel like there's just all this data, and yet maybe it's not always the right data or in the right place
you got
at
it.
the right time. Yeah.
All of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah.
You're right. These companies have been around for, some 100 years, and you would think that the data is A, there, and B, accessible. And very often it's not in neither
Yeah.
one or one of them, and it's spread all over the world in different lab notebooks, physical and electronic,
Mm.
maybe electronic. It's very, very difficult. And so how do we help customers get started without having to rake the ocean full of ones and zeros to get started? That's really where building that science into the AI right from the get go alleviates a lot of that need for a lot of that data because we already know a lot of that information. We can build it in institutionally and really accelerate that development.
Yeah. So what does that look like? So say more a little bit about that because I think it's
Yeah.
still kind of, 20,000 miles up in
Yeah.
the atmosphere. You know, what does it mean to be science based? Is this
Yeah.
generative and how does it work?
Yeah. So it is generative in a way because we can generate new insights. But fundamentally, when we talk about specialized AI or science-based AI, we're building the fundamentals of physics and chemistry into the models that we build with our customers in partnership. I always like to say for the senior executives who aren't necessarily scientists, and I don't have a scientific background, elephants don't fly. We all know elephants don't
Mm.
fly, but with commercial AI, something you get off the shelf, you have to train it that elephants don't fly, and therefore it takes time. And then
Yeah.
a lot of the answers early on, you get, well, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we even going down this path? So they give up. Where by building all of that knowledge up front into the models and then using different models solving different problems, that really accelerates the insights. And that gets us to, even in the first rudimentary models that we build with our partners, there are aha moments. We've
Mm.
solved some very fundamental problems for customers that have been struggling with, maybe it's a PFAS chemical that they're trying to get out of one of their formulations. We were
Yeah.
able to, give them insights within 30 days, something that they've been trying for years to solve, or at least, the last 2 years. Within 30 days, we gave them directionally approaches to head to. So
Mm.
by building that institutional and that scientific knowledge into those models early on, we really accelerate that. And then we can
Yeah.
train those models as we continue. And then
Yeah.
customers use them once they're mature to drive insights to really do a lot of testing that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do on a bench, if you will.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, 30 days seems fast. I know in the world of Chat GPT, if I have to wait longer than 30 seconds for my
Right.
answer, it seems like it's taking a long time. But to your point, this is, I guess, a much more rigorous approach as needed, right? I mean, it has to be rooted in the scientific principles, whether it be chemistry or physics or material
Right.
science to make that happen.
Right. We're
What about
dealing with
the
scientists, by the way. So, they
yeah.
want facts. They don't
They want
want
facts,
guessing.
and they're probably a little bit risk averse. So
They
let's
really are.
talk about those risks. So
Yeah.
I think what are the risks that you guys see or that you talk about and you work to alleviate with your clients when you think about using AI in product development?
Yeah. So, honestly, the risk that we see are people are gripped by this notion of not having all the data in one place. And honestly, it's a bit of the boogeyman that, part of the industry who is about trying to collect all of your data in one place before you get started. That's their message. And the reality of it is that the risk of not getting started now, you're allowing your competitors to distance themselves from you, right? To either
Mm.
gain the edge or to expand if you can't do that. Part of the reason why we do a lot of work with mid-sized companies is because they can't throw money and bodies at this internally. And they have to do what they have to do in terms of closing the gap with those big companies. And we see that every day. And they genuinely see AI as both a panacea, so we have to kind of temper their enthusiasm, but
Right.
also give them the true value, vision of what it can really do for them. So the risks, getting back to your question, are just getting started. That's one. The other risk is the industry has spent 100 years hugging their IP and not allowing it out into the world because genuinely that is the keys to their kingdom. How do they work with partners, feel comfortable about working with partners, but still have the security, literal and figuratively, to be able to really collaborate with people outside their four walls? And that's a perceived risk as well, right? The
Mm.
cloud industry had to go through this, right? It's all of our data needs to be here, and then people realize that AWS and Azure are probably even more secure than your own network itself. So these are early days.
Yeah.
Those are the challenges that we work through with our customers.
Yeah, I can see that. And certainly the IP, the intellectual property and data privacy is
Mm,
probably the thing I hear the most. In
hmm.
many ways, it's maybe the most misunderstood, in my opinion. And I've done some work around this. There's some folks that, there's this perception of, oh, if I put it out there, it's there for the public domain, right? It's like,
Right.
well, no, no, no. There are firewalls. And by the way, don't put your test data into Chat GPT, because Chat GPT is open domain, right? So
Exactly.
buyer beware. But there are other, I mean, heck, there's a version of Chat that you can buy that's private. And
Right.
obviously, if you're working with a company like Noble, there's firewalls and privacy protections to protect all that data.
Yeah, I'll even go one further. So you're 100% right. There is the risk on the generative AI side that you are putting all of your information out on the internet. So our customers do have or are working through these policies for
Yeah.
their employees. So that should be looked at. Where science-based AI folks like NobleAI work is within their customers' domains. So we have the ability to build these models and serve them to our customers within their private cloud. So that's a big differentiator for us because we feel like, yes, we're not going to try to change the hearts and minds about people's IP, right? We don't have enough time to try to create a sea change there. So for us, we feel like we have the ability to work within that framework, and that's been very successful. The second thing is the other challenge is in the AI world is this notion of who owns the models, right? Who owns this IP,
Mhm.
right? Is
Yeah.
it the AI company or is it the chemical company that's bringing that data? And historically, all of the last 5 to 10 years, the AI companies have said, oh, no, no, those are our models. Those are our models. And so it's really set up to be this very confrontational, is it ours? Is it theirs? Is it co-owned? How do we do that if we want to publish it? I mean, it can become a nightmare.
Mm.
We've taken a different approach. We build customized models specific to our customers, and they own those models because for us it's important that they can build from there. It's theirs. I always use the analogy of Steven Spielberg writes a screenplay. He wants a movie made. He goes and raises money and gets it made. He takes it to a filmmaker. He takes it to, a Skywalker Ranch, and they own the way the movie gets made, the
Mm.
special effects and all of the different ways that it becomes a fabulous Steven Spielberg movie. Steven Spielberg owns that movie. The
Yeah.
movie company doesn't own that movie. And so we that's our approach. We feel as though, and our customers appreciate that, because they don't have to focus on, oh my God, are they going to turn around and sell this to a competitor, which is obviously in
Yeah.
business a very real situation. So
Yeah.
that's how this industry is starting to
Mm.
evolve. We feel like we're on the forefront of it.
Yeah, that ownership risk. That's great. The other thing that I hear, and this is a widespread concern regarding all AI and all generative AI, is that we're using a limited data set and that we're just kind of creating this very narrow
Mm.
spiral based on limited data. And once it gets skewed, the truth gets skewed.
Yeah, the bias comes
Yeah.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
that bias is always a an omnipresent thought around building these models in AI.
Yeah.
It is one of the biggest reasons why companies should be partnering with companies like NobleAI, because institutional bias happens within the same four walls. It's the same people
Sure.
building these models, and they own that box. Now, AI does a great job of, especially science-based AI and specialized AI, to broaden your horizons, right? Your design space, but bringing in people with external experiences, from either people within the industry, or even better yet, people outside the industry. What are the people in oil and gas doing? Although it's related, upstream is very different.
Very much
What are
so.
they
Yeah.
doing in exploration? What are people doing for alternative energy? Is there something there that we can bring to the packaging industry? What are people doing in biosynthetics, and what can we bring to that? So you're right. That's if you're trying to do it internally and without multiple different ways of building these models. With Noble AI, I think for our our domain of different models, we've got over 45 different ways
Mm.
of building models that could all be combined. It's not just kind of repurposing the same model over and over, because that generates bias.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose once a solution is identified, let's just say you brought up the PFAS example. Once the new alternative formulation that replaces PFAS is identified, there's still lab work that gets done. There's all
Oh,
kinds of testing. And so new data is created that can then get
absolutely.
plugged into the model, as long as I guess you understand where it goes in. And to your point, there's always bias has always existed in
Always existed. Even more
in
so without
life.
AI.
Let's just
Yeah.
say it's in
Oh
life.
yeah, I mean, even before, right? I mean, you have your scientists who are brilliant, but they know what they know. That automatically instills bias. But you brought up a very good point, which is this notion that AI is going to wash away jobs. That may be the case in other industries, but
Mm.
absolutely not in our space. The need for, first of all, these are scientists. They don't trust anything. They've got to verify, they've got to double verify, they got to triple verify. So, whatever we do in silico on a computer is going to be wet verified. It's got to be verified in a lab that, yes, this makes sense. I'm
Mm.
replicating this, and therefore this gets me to my ultimate goal faster. So we're not seeing that at all. What we see is the advent of doing a lot more, a lot faster. They have moonshot projects that have been on our whiteboard for 2 years and haven't moved. And, there's a sign that says, do not erase. And,
Right?
people have left that, but it's always stayed in the upper left hand corner. Now these things are starting to get pulled into view. These same folks, they're not losing their jobs by any stretch. They now get
Yeah.
to work on 4 times the amount of projects than they ever had. So that's been very exciting.
That's cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool. So this is maybe a good segue to our next topic, which is really around customers and customer acceptance, maybe even the customer experience. And I know that Ned,
Yeah.
you're an expert in sales and business development, and that's the role that you've played
Right.
with a number of companies, really helping drive that customer and that value. And I know that you're out talking to chemical companies and people across the value chain every day. What are your customers excited and or concerned about when they think about bringing in an AI-based solution to their company?
I would say the folks who are looking inside, the operational folks are worried about disruption, right?
Mm,
Transformation is scary. And so that that's number one. Number two is, do we really have the people in house that can leverage it? It's not just enough for a partner to hand this to us and run with it. We have to have the people that can run with it. And very
right,
often there is some change over there. But I would say for the most part, ultimately, because it is new, the finance folks can't really qualify it, right? Or quantify it, actually. Therefore, it becomes this, are we risk averse? Are we really ready for this? So, my job as a business development person and my team is really there to help them understand what the business value is, right? The scientific value, I think, is pretty demonstrable. The economic value is really where the senior executives want to be able to sign off on it, but they're
right.
not necessarily willing to jump into the deep end of the pool without some either a reference or some business case built. So we spend a lot of time. What would an acceleration of this project or product be financially for you? What are the risks that you're seeing now from a supply chain? We have one customer who had to take a product off the market for 8 weeks because one of their
Wow.
small little chemicals, yeah, 8 weeks is a major
Wow.
product.
That's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, so it was millions of dollars. And so when you have that and it's visceral, like that is, you get to figure that out pretty quickly. But there are others that are just trying to figure this stuff out. Business wise, it has to move a needle, right? We always talk about it's got to save money, it's got to make money, it's got to de risk, or it's got to transform. If you can't do two of the four, then, probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Action then. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Who usually brings you in? Where does that happen? Does that happen at the lab level, let's just say, or the product development guys? Is it the executive team that says, oh yeah, we know we need to do something different? How do you guys normally enter an organization?
Yeah,
And then we kind of touched on this. There's obviously different organizational priorities depending on where you sit and what you're looking
sure.
at. How do you bridge those gaps?
Yeah, we just met with the CEO of a very, very large Fortune 1000, maybe even 500 CEO and his entire executive team. And they
Yeah,
broke it out into four stages. And research and development for a chemical company is a very tall pole in that tent. So is manufacturing and engineering. So they bucket their priorities based on revenue, right? I mean, that's ultimately, especially if you're a publicly traded company, it's what moves the needle. So, who brings us in? To get back to your question, number one is very often it will be a product development manager, someone who is either behind the eight ball on their product development goals, right? Their product is delayed, it's over
sure.
budget. Those are the folks who have the budget, but they're not the ones who can go and run these experiments. And they're the ones who then have to bring us into the data science teams or the R&D teams. Very often we need all three of those to get consensus. It's a challenge in my world of selling and
Mhm.
business development because you do cross all of these domains, right? If you're selling IT security, you get to sell to the security team, and it's a pretty linear path. For
Yeah.
us, it cuts across all business lines. It cuts across manufacturing. It cuts across engineering. From how do we get from the bench to the market? It's either the R&D team brings us to product development brings us to the R&D teams, the two, but nothing happens until we're speaking with senior executives because they're the folks who are looking outside the boat, as we say, and they're looking for icebergs. They're the ones who are saying, how can we get more gas into this engine? How can we do it without hiring a boatload of people, without spending unbelievable amounts? Spending millions to make millions doesn't make sense. And so they're the folks who ultimately we need to get to really drive this forward.
Yeah. Makes sense. And I mean, ultimately they hold the purse strings and make the big decisions. It also strikes me, Ned, that there's a real need for change management because this is a change in business processes
Sure is.
that have probably been in place, as you say, maybe for 100 years in some cases. And it's a change that hits, interestingly, not just R&D and product development, but it's also a marketing effort and it's
Oh,
potentially a manufacturing and engineering effort. How do you see this playing out? The change management of introducing really a significant new tool and new approach to chemical innovation in a
yeah.
company.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Some of this is just absolutely institutional. So, part of what we work through is, are they culturally ready to really adopt a change? Now, we do it in a crawl, walk, run methodology. So, we're not
Okay.
asking people to burn the boats and the bridges and adopt this new path. So, we bring them along on this journey. But you're right. It's everything from administrative. How do we deal with people getting access to our systems? How do we give them access to our data? Do we want to? How do we minimize that scope? All sorts of different processes. That's why this crawl, walk, run definitely works, because they get the taste of it. They see the value of doing one or two projects. And then our customers almost across the board add multiple use cases and
Yeah.
models onto the platform. So you're 100% right, especially in new technology. Those who are looking out of the boat tend to adopt earlier and make it happen, right? Transformation is never easy. And
It's hard.
so it's hard. Exactly.
Hard stuff. So that's great. What's next for you? What should we be looking at for Noble AI in 24? What should we be looking at for AI and chemical innovation as
Yeah.
we look ahead into 2024?
I think you're going to see the rise of more and more partners adopting the specialized AI. For us, it's just going deeper and wider with our customers, finding more opportunity to show. Really, Victoria, there's nothing that we can't work on and move a needle on. If it has anything to do with science, we want to at least take a shot at it. The second thing that we're really working on is expanding our presence through Microsoft. Microsoft is one of our lead investors. They see a tremendous opportunity. Not only are they an investor, but they're also a customer. They want to bring this science-based AI, science AI for science, to their customers, and so that's really been starting to really take off. We're going to
Interesting.
be down at Sarah Week with them, and very excited for that as well. So
We've come to the end of today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and want to learn more. Simply visit thechemicalshow.com for additional information and helpful resources. Join us again next time here on The Chemical Show with Victoria Meyer.
yeah, there's just a ton for us to do, but boy, there's, right in our sweet spot, there's just a ton of customers to work with and a ton of problems to solve.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, Ned, this has been great. Thank you for joining us today on the Chemical Show.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you inviting me, Victoria.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. And thank you everyone for listening. Keep listening, keep following, keep sharing, and we will talk again soon.